Welcome to another episode of iSocial Talks. I'm your host, Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans on Twitter. And today we are talking LinkedIn. How do you find value on LinkedIn? And just give you a little background, on a previous episode, I talked about how to find value on Twitter, which I would definitely claim is the place where I spend the most time and most engagement on social media. And then last week I was live at IBM Insight in Las Vegas, big data conference, and they announced IBM and Twitter. And I actually did a iSocial Talks episode live there talking about how to live tweet. And I had lots of great feedback. Once again, thank you guys so much for your feedback, sharing my posts, keep encouraging me to keep on doing these videos on a couple times a week basis. And one of the most popular things I kept getting the question asked was like, Brian, how do you find value on LinkedIn, or how do you find value on Google Plus, or what's your strategy for Facebook? So rather than answer all of those at once, I wanted to kind of dive into what and how I utilize LinkedIn. And LinkedIn for me is a amazing network. I actually love LinkedIn. I've been using it for a long time. And I'm going to kind of provide some of my insights and some of my strategy, as well as hopefully give you guys some actionable tips on really, if you're going to spend time on LinkedIn, what you should be doing. So once again, thank you guys for subscribing. Once again, subscribe below down there. I will be doing these episodes hopefully on a regular basis to keep entertaining and providing you guys some value. So first off, LinkedIn. As you know, I've wrote about in many of my blog posts, and I've shared often on this show, is that I believe storytelling utilizing social media is a very powerful tool for many reasons. But for me, the digital resume, our reputation, our digital first impression is now every action we take on social media. It's not just our resume that we have on paper, and it's changed. It's not just our LinkedIn profile. Our LinkedIn profile must be dynamic. It must be updated. I couldn't stress that as much as possible. We want to have a better profile picture. Make sure your profile picture is, something that represents you, is actually you. And we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. And then also, kind of updating that and tracking that is very important. But I think too often we think of LinkedIn, or many people use LinkedIn only when they're looking for a job or when they're recruiting someone to get hired. And I think you're making a grave mistake, because I think some changes that LinkedIn's made recently, but for me, I've been using LinkedIn for far more than that, for well over 3 years. And what I like to think about is I have a different strategy for how I use Twitter, what I share on Twitter, who I engage with on Twitter. I also have a different strategy for LinkedIn, for Google Plus, for each one of the networks. But having a different strategy doesn't mean you have to be a different person. And let me rephrase that in a different way. I have often met and engaged with people that are amazing on Twitter. They're really active, they're themselves, they're really into their content, they're sharing, they're commenting. But when I engage them on LinkedIn, they're like a robot. They are a completely different persona. And for me, social media today, every digital action we take builds our reputation, builds our digital footprint. And that includes when you're getting hired, when you're getting recruiting, when you're doing social selling. And what I mean by that is, if you're two different people on two different networks, what does that say about you? And if you have to be someone different on LinkedIn to get business, are those people really the people that you want to be getting business from as well? Why would someone want to do business with you if you can't even be yourself on a social network? And so one of the things that I'm going to kind of talk about there is, what content you like on LinkedIn, what the content you share on LinkedIn. All of that matters, because for me, when I want to check out someone, or I'm looking into someone, I look at their LinkedIn profile. That's great, but I hit recent activities. And one of my favorite things to do is scroll back about over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and look at their recent activity on that LinkedIn profile. What stuff they liked, what stuff they commented on, what updates they made to their profile, if they're using LinkedIn Publisher, if they're posting in groups, if they're actually active in the groups that they're connected with. And all these things take effort. But for me, LinkedIn, if you have a strategy and you understand what you should be posting there, it can be very powerful. And what I mean by that is, I post and share roughly 100 times a day on Twitter. And on LinkedIn, at max, I try to stay between 3 and 4 posts a day. Now, what does that mean for me? Does that mean everything I post on Twitter is spam and useless? No. On Twitter, I repeat some content. I will be a little bit more easygoing with what I share. With LinkedIn, I have a reason of why I'm sharing it, what I'm sharing exactly, and hopefully what I'm getting out of it. Oftentimes, I will share a post on LinkedIn to create dialogue, to build comments. Other times, I'll share content on LinkedIn because it backs my philosophy, so it strengthens my argument. Other times I'll share content on LinkedIn because the person that has actually wrote the content is someone that I value and someone I want to my social network to say, hey, you should be listening to this person. Now, that's not very hard. It's content that you're already creating, content that you're already probably sharing on another social network. And just sharing that on LinkedIn is great. And I talked about on Twitter how visuals are very important. Well, LinkedIn does those visuals for you because it's doing your embedded graphics and such. But for me, it's actually the comments. It's actually your status update on a link is where the value is. So on Twitter, I say use visuals, capture attention. On LinkedIn, I say use your status update within that blog post and piece of content you're using to grab attention. State your opinion, because remember, people follow you for you. They're going to read an article because you recommended it, but provide your insight. This is great content curation, and this is at its smallest form. So if you find a great piece of content that you think your network, your professional LinkedIn network should know about, share that content, add your insights, add a quote or something that is valuable that's not the sentence or the title of that blog post, and then either a call to action or maybe even a question, or oftentimes I'll say this is a must read, and I don't use must read very often. But what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to provide value. And I talk about providing value in everything you do on social media, because it doesn't matter the network to me. It's about the users. It's about connecting with the people. And I know Bill Jaffrey just posted on LinkedIn a great post about what we're doing wrong on social media. And I'll make sure to put that note here in the notes, in the show notes, because it's a great blog post you must read on LinkedIn. And this kind of leads me into my next piece, and that's LinkedIn Publisher. So hopefully you on the listening have heard of LinkedIn Publisher. Maybe you've used it once or twice. Maybe like myself, you're using it for a combination of your own thoughts as well as syndicating some of your other blog posts to other places. But I absolutely love LinkedIn Publisher, even as it's changed. When I first was posting, I was lucky enough to be part of the beta team for LinkedIn Publisher. And I was getting 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 views on my content in the first 2 weeks. Now, as they opened up the platform for LinkedIn Publisher, that's changed a little bit, and my LinkedIn Publisher posts now are averaging 2,000 posts in that first week, or 2,000 views. But for me, the views aren't really what I care about. It's the comments, it's the engagement, it's the people reaching out to me, and I'm getting some amazing comments. My last blog post in the first 48 hours, my last blog post to LinkedIn Publisher, in the first 48 hours, I had 39 comments. I can't get that many comments in the life of my posts on a blog. So with that, I recommend using LinkedIn Publisher, finding a way to share your voice, but provide value with it. Don't just post a sales pitch or a marketing blurb or the same old stuff. Try to be unique, because we're going to get those notifications that say you're publishing on Publisher. The last thing you want someone to do is to turn off the notification for you. So if you've turned off the notifications for me on LinkedIn Publisher, because I try to only publish once or twice a week on Publisher, I am sorry. I understand, and hopefully you find my content through other ways, through other social connections. But LinkedIn Publisher is another great option in LinkedIn. I recommend checking it out for sure. The analytics on LinkedIn is another thing that's always been impressive for me. Not only if you're a LinkedIn Platinum user, which I was for a long period of time. I actually turned off my LinkedIn Publisher with my LinkedIn Platinum usage recently, mainly because I wanted to see what I'd be missing out and what information I felt like I really needed to use that LinkedIn Platinum account for. And the analytics are great, like understanding who sees your content in your network, understanding who's viewing your profile. Unlike Twitter and unlike Facebook, we can't see on those platforms who's actually researching us, but you can do that daily on LinkedIn. And I'd say I'm guessing this is about average, but I'm averaging about 1,200 to 1,400 views to my LinkedIn profile a week. Well, understanding who's viewing it is a very great resource, not only to understand what I should be posting, but maybe who I should be reaching out to, who I should be engaging. Oftentimes I'll figure out who's found me on LinkedIn, and I'll find them on Twitter, and start the conversation on Twitter. So my last part on finding value on LinkedIn is really connecting with people. Oftentimes I'll connect and engage with someone on Twitter first, realize that we have a great conversation or relationship, and I'll transfer that onto LinkedIn, and then we'll have a kind of a professional network, building our community, our professional communities. I'm not a big fan, and I do not connect with everybody on LinkedIn. I think even last week, I had 47 LinkedIn requests while at the IBM Insight event. And of those 47, I'd say about half of them had either met me in person or reached out or we've connected, and I accepted them immediately. The other ones for me have to reach out or connect or make that next step, or I'm not going to connect. And that's just a personal preference. You can, there's those ones that are the lions that connect and build the largest network possible on LinkedIn. But for me, it's about the people. It's connecting with the people. It's those one-to-one relationships. And if someone connects with me on LinkedIn, they're in my past life, maybe a mentor or coworker, or maybe they're a new relationship, I want to provide them value. And hopefully I provide them value by sharing content that I find, by curating it and sharing it a couple times a day, by creating LinkedIn publisher posts that share my insights, provide my input, posting and joining groups so that I can connect with like-minded people and kind of filter that noise. And then lastly, this is something that really means a lot to me is, your dynamic resume, your online reputation. It's really what you put into it. It's your work. So I know a lot of people that are saying, well, if I'm looking for a job, I go on LinkedIn. Well, it's too late then. You should be building your digital story every single day. And by doing that, it means sharing content, engaging, commenting on other people's posts. Why would someone want to comment on your post if you've never reached out and commented on other people's posts? So I recommend being yourself. Don't be a double agent. Don't be someone different on Twitter than what you're on LinkedIn. But also respect and understand the LinkedIn platform. Respect what you share, why you're sharing it. Every single post I share on LinkedIn has a reason. And I think if you can do that, if you can actually share valuable content for a reason, don't just auto post it because you're posting it to Twitter or to Facebook or because a brand told you to. Add in that status a little bit of value, and I promise you're going to find value in LinkedIn far beyond your resume, recruiting, and your those simple elements. You're going to find great connections, great value, and hopefully that leads to relationships and what I call the power of social, which is these online conversations and relationships that lead to amazing friendships in real life, and hopefully partnerships, and together we build a better social community. So that's my tips here on LinkedIn. As always, follow me on Twitter, iSocialFans. Look for me on LinkedIn. Remember, hopefully you're engaging and connecting first so that we can connect on LinkedIn. And my last tip there on LinkedIn is don't think about LinkedIn as a use it and forget it network. I try to check in on LinkedIn 3 times a day, and I also set up notifications on certain groups because I think that provides value. Hopefully you found value in this. Once again, subscribe down below. Submit your questions using hashtag iSocialTalks. And until next week, or until my next episode, I hope you find value on LinkedIn like I do. Cheers.